it is something interesting that I think every salesperson, they want to learn how to master the art of communication, right? Advice on that, because I know this question, even me, I asked you this like 3 4 times throughout this time that we've known each other, and you have been able to guide me through this process. How would you explain something like that apart from script and practice, which we know is important? What other advice do you recommend for people that they just want to get better at communicating with prospects or just people overall?
And, well, number one, you got to put yourself in that situation. You got to live in that uncomfortable moment of either talking to prospects or talking to people. As the technology is getting better and better, we have information at the fingertips. I think the skill of communication isn't improving.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, again, we're looking for magic pills and shortcuts. Really, the magic is in the work people aren't doing or putting themselves in a situation where they are talking to people. Just like everything else, if you want to get good at basketball, you got to play a lot of basketball, right? If you want to be good at communication, you got to communicate well, effectively, efficiently with the people that you're speaking to at a high frequency, right? And so, and you said something there where I wasn't born like this. In fact, I'm a very private guy. I'm a very, when you talk to me one on one, I love having one on one conversation, but in speaking in front of people, prospecting, it was very new to me. It was
Really?
very uncomfortable, right?
Wow.
And even
I
objections.
would never have guessed that. I'm telling you, you would never have guessed that.
No, and I appreciate you saying that. And that is the result of thousands of hours talking to people, crashing and burning, not getting the appointments, being disappointed, and really not at the results, but the lack of just iterations that I was making on myself, right? And so there are a lot of teaching moments that I could have learned. However, it took me a while, but I did learn.
So so you get in the business, right? Walk us through like the first time you got a deal. I've always been
Yeah.
curious to ask you this question. Did you find it? Was it a referral? How did you started feeling that confidence of saying, okay, when you do one, we could do 100, right? I think we all say
Right.
that in our environment. So your first one, how did that happen?
It was, what I did know, that the second day I joined the company, we went to go on broker caravan. And there's nothing wrong with broken caravans. You should definitely know your inventory. But that wasn't the way that I was going to get business. I needed business today. And so we started door knocking with really bad flyers. And I just, without being scripted, with not knowing what to say, just went out there. And you would think you would get something if you talk to enough people, but that
Yeah.
wasn't it, right? I think the average real estate agent lasts about 6 months in the industry. My first deal came from my friends group after 10 months, right? So knowing that, for those of you that are out there listening, do not get discouraged, right? Do not get discouraged if you've been in the business for a little bit or, a little over average. It's there. We just got to dig a little bit deeper. My first deal was out in LA with a good friend of mine. It was a 5 unit apartment building on Alvarado Street. So yeah, it was exciting, but it was tough lasting those 10 months without a paycheck coming in.
So 10 months, no paycheck. I have a community that I teach the principles of just starting the business. And I have a saying where it's like, hey, in this business, you're going to be slave to your mind or slave to the work. At the beginning, you're going to have to decide which one's more important to you, right? And that's usually what it takes to get started. Then when you start leveling up, then you become a business owner, which now, I mean, you know exactly what I mean when I say that. How did you transition from saying, okay, I'm doing the business, right? I get it. Now let me start leveraging myself and multiplying myself, buying back my time and just structuring everything. How did you know when the time was right? Because I get a lot of people that they come into our space and right away, a few weeks in, they're like, okay, now I want to go build a team, you know? What is the best advice that you can give someone like that? And also, did you had doubts when you were thinking of also like saying, hey, I'm ready for my next level? And when did you know it was right?
And it's a multi-layered question, so I'll address the first one first. I think a lot of people
Sure.
step into it thinking that the business itself year after year, it'll just be great, right? There's no downside. It'll just up and up and up and up. And that's not true. Well, it could be true, but certainly for the most case, it's not true. And so there has to be, obviously the mindset has to come. The mindset you have to build, that you have a positive outlook that this will work out. Not if, but it will work out, right? And so the daily actions that a lot of people take, that I took, although I didn't get a lot of results, it had to pay off. There was no way this energy and sweat equity was going to be wasted. I knew that effort was stored, and at some point it was going to unleash. And so, and really just being patient, right? I think that's number one. And I think the book Outlier really just puts in a nice little bow where 10,000 hours minimum, right, to master something. And if you're in a situation for long enough where you're making iterations and not quitting, I think that's a formula for success. The second portion is, I was presenting to a group the other day, and this came up, is that I thought I was making a lot of money. I think, and at a certain point, I was making decent money. However, I didn't have time freedom. I took my family to a vacation down in Carlsbad, and I was working on my vacation. I had two kids then. I have four now, but 2 years, two kids, and all I was doing is answering emails, answering phone calls, and then we would come out of the amusement park, go to dinner. I would ask my wife to order me something while I was out making calls and putting out fires, so call, and just doing deals. And I knew that wasn't it. It was time to scale. It was time to delegate. It's time to duplicate. And I think that was a harsh lesson in reality.
So you realize I have to find a way to work smarter, not harder. And then how did you find that? Like, how did you transition over to doing that? And was there any fear or anything you had to overcome?
And I appreciate that. And I think there's a common misconception where a lot of people believe if you have if you have money freedom, you have time freedom, which is absolutely untrue. Money freedom plus systems equal time freedom.
Okay.
I didn't build enough systems around my business where I could leave my business and still make money.
Uh,
I was the highest paid worker in my own business. That means I was, quote unquote, the best at things. I didn't trust enough people to handle certain things. I was really just handcuffing myself. Now, was there fear delegating and scaling? Absolutely.
it was.
Absolutely. I don't think fear and being scared of something ever goes away, right? As we're building out the brokerage and doing all sorts of different businesses, I think their fear is always there. And a mentor told me, courage is in an absence of fear. Courage is acting upon even though there is fear. So
Mm, mm.
to answer your question, that fear is always there. It's just I don't live by the 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 notion of the fear is going to control me.
And then we brought up mentors, coaches along the way. I think you and I have always seen coaching and mentoring the same way, and it's nice to see that. Is there someone in particular or a group of in particular that you can say, I'm just happy that I connected with that from day one?
Oh, absolutely. Two coaches have really changed my career path. Number one is Mike Ferry. Number two is Danny Morel. I don't think those two gentlemen get enough credit in terms of how many lives they have changed. And along with that, I'm a firm believer in collaborative effort. And so, when we founded the company Pack Home Realty, Anthony Morel and Jason Lucero were a huge part of my mindset shift.